Welcome, everyone. We will start in just a moment. I see the attendee count growing a bit, so we'll just give everybody just a brief minute to settle in. Really excited to share information with you today about the Instructional Leadership Certificate. So we'll hold for just maybe 30 more seconds to allow people to get settled. All right, welcome. Just an overview of today's session. I'm Jen Riley. I'm the Portfolio Director for ILC, the Instructional Leadership Certificate here at Professional Education at the Graduate School of Education. I work on a lot of our teacher-facing programs, and I'm joined today, or will be joined after our brief overview, by Noah Heller. He is our faculty chair, and he also serves as a faculty member in our graduate programs, and he's the director of the Harvard Teacher Fellows Program. We're just going to spend a brief time in the beginning sort of going over the sort of certificate structure and just an overview of what to expect around the Instructional Leadership Certificate. Thank you to all of you for submitting questions in advance. We are going to try to work in as much of that content into this overview so that hopefully by the time we get to the open Q&A, it can really be about some of the more nuanced sort of content questions or anything that you've heard from us thus far this afternoon. I have a number of colleagues from Professional Education who will be monitoring the chat and letting me know if there are new questions or sort of themes that are coming up. So please be sure to, as you're going, if it distracts you, don't worry, we'll have opportunities to have open questions at the end. But do feel free to use the chat to submit questions as you think of them as we go through this information. Whatever we don't get to in terms of questions, we will follow up via email. So as I said, I've got a great team that's capturing what you all want to be knowing about. So without further ado, I will continue and get us started. So a few fast facts about ILC. This is a lot to take in. You can read it as you go, but I will pause on each item for just a second. ILC is designed for current or aspiring teacher leaders. Depending on where you work, that can look like a lot of different sort of titles or roles, including things like mentors, instructional coaches, department chairs, grade level leads, really sort of anything from formal district positions or school level positions to informal. You know, mentoring is not always an appointed position. So really anybody who is serving as a leader from the classroom. Or aspires to sort of develop their leadership skills from the classroom. There are 4 courses in the Instructional Leadership Certificate, 2 of which are actively enrolling, and the following 2 will be live in 2022. We're still developing them. The first course that we released came out last fall. It's called Articulating the Intangibles of Teaching. And then we have our first cohort of our Teachers Mentoring Teachers course happening in July. All ILC courses may be taken on their own, so you're not required to complete the certificate or even apply to a certificate program in order to experience any of the courses. They can be taken in any order. You'll see a note below that we do recommend that you start with the first course that we built, Articulating the Intangibles of Teaching. Mostly because the course progression is really sort of reflecting on your own practice and how to talk about an individual's practice, so yours or anybody, any colleague that you're working with, and then moving towards like smaller group relationships, maybe a one-on-one mentoring relationship or a relationship with a few mentors, moving on to instructional coaching where you might have small groups of people working together and then larger teams. So really, you should enter the Instructional Leadership Certificate with whatever course is most relevant and timely to you. To earn the whole certificate, you do need to complete all 4 courses. All courses are asynchronous, meaning there are no live components. There are deadlines within each week. They're 6 weeks in length, and you can expect to sort of expend about 3 to 4 hours a week. We give out certificates of participation and clock hours that our participants, for all of our programs at Professional Education, participants tend to use that for whatever school, district, or other sort of organization criteria for professional development hours, or any sort of stepwise standards or competencies. So if you have questions about that, how it applies to your particular context, we have a team that can help you out with that. But we find that the most unifying way to do this is to offer the sort of discrete number of professional learning clock hours for each course. Courses are moderated by expert practitioners. So they'll be coming in and interacting with discussion posts, synthesizing the content of the week. And as these are online courses that are designed to be sort of enduring over time, we miss out on the opportunity for sort of timely application to current events or things like that. And so our expert practitioners are able to pull in that type of, either school year or sort of current event type of information. As such, we really want you to rely on each other. So we've designed the learning experience to leverage peer feedback as a way to practice elements that you learn, and also sort of apply things to your settings and learn about other settings. The entire certificate can be completed for less than $1,600. The courses are about $350 per person. And if you join in a large group, you're eligible for certain discount pricing. So if you're curious about that, you can always reach out for more information. Courses are offered 4 times per year. And at each of those times, every course that's available will be offered. So as I mentioned, we don't have all 4 courses built yet. They are coming, but we do have a June cohort of articulating the intangibles of teaching, and then a July cohort of our teacher and mentoring teachers. In October, both of those courses will be offered again, and we'll release those dates very soon. The earliest opportunity, if you hop on right now, or if you've already taken Articulating the Intangibles of Teaching, the earliest opportunity to earn the complete certificate would be the summer of 2022. Just very briefly, as I mentioned, there are 4 courses. In each course, we tackle really specific content that's domain to that type of instructional leadership role and the work that happens in classrooms around that role. But there are certificate through lines, and you'll see those in the blue arrows below, where we are constantly thinking about ways that we unify each course along those through lines. As you move through the course, we really tried to think about modeling the different types of pedagogies and really sort of cognitive load that you might take on in different pieces of your learning. And so the progression every week in every course, you'll follow this same progression where you arrive, you get the information about what the deadlines are for that week. You move on to My Backpack, which is sort of where we think about you applying and activating your prior knowledge. So this is the first opportunity to share with the community and our community board, where you would post and interact with other people, meet your colleagues that you'll be taking the course with, and really bring to light what you bring to the table as experienced practitioners. The next piece of your week would be, some head down work where you're individually tackling new content as you prepare to apply it to your context over the rest of the course activities. We move into what we call the lounge, meant to sort of mimic a teacher's lounge or whatever space within your school community or context, where you have that sort of formal or mostly informal small group collaboration and feedback, where you might bring a puzzle or a problem of practice and you workshop with peers. The next thing you do, as you do every single day, hundreds of times a day, you try it out. You develop a practice challenge, or you plan for a practice challenge if you don't have an opportunity to sort of do it in your classroom that week. You sort of hypothesize what it would be like to try it out in your classroom. And then you end up sharing that again. You'll see the similar icon of our group discussion in the community board. So this is a place where you're not hoping to sort of share a perfect synthesis and this is what I got out of it and I'm so excited. Mostly what we've experienced in our previous cohorts is, sharing continued puzzles and reaching back out to this larger cohort to really develop your practice. And then the last thing you do is you you consolidate your learning and you plan how you're going to take it forward. As you move through the weeks, a lot of that includes reflecting back to what you had been thinking about in week 1 or week 2 as you move forward. These are our certificate goals. Each course obviously will have specific learning objectives. We can't have a course for teachers without great learning objectives, but they all build towards these overarching learning goals that are for the whole certificate. I'll just take a second for everyone to read them on their own. We will be sharing these slides afterwards, so don't worry about taking notes or anything like that. You'll have access to all the materials shared today. So without further ado, I want to introduce Noah Heller. He's our faculty chair. He and I will just have somewhat of an informal conversation about sort of why ILC. I'm going to share this afterwards. I think it's probably better and more fun, certainly for me, to not share my screen, but to be able to have us both share our faces with you, and then we can interact with the chat. So stay tuned for this when we actually send you the materials afterwards. But for now, I want to introduce Noah.
Thanks, Jen. It's a pleasure to be here.
So if you could tell the group, I mean, we've been working on this project for a couple of years now, and a lot of it actually started collaborating with real teachers in the field. So if you want to talk a little bit from your perspective as the faculty lead about sort of why ILC, why make this, and sort of what do you hope it does for the field?
Sure. I think first and foremost, I'm a teacher and all the faculty members working on this project are a teacher, and it's very important to us that we position the courses as highly facilitated experiences to essentially crowdsource from participants and also from the field to surface what our existing best practices in developing teacher leaders. As all of you who are teachers know, the work is incredibly gratifying and challenging. And unlike other professions, it can be really difficult to navigate a career ladder. You know, most of us find our reward in the career by seeing students learn and grow. And in being teachers, we sacrifice some of those other aspects of professionalism, like in some cases status, in some cases career advancement. And one of our theories of action or theories of change is that provided ample growth opportunities for teachers to formalize some of the de facto leadership they take on among peers, we help reinforce opportunities for people to experience professional growth throughout their careers. And so this is an effort to contribute to that, to contribute to career ladders for teachers that keep great people in the classroom. Of course, some folks here today might be teachers currently and looking for administrative positions. There are other certificates that are really geared towards admin roles at the sort of principal level. This is much more about teachers leading teachers, instructional leaders, having a seat at the table when it comes to developing talent. So helping to build capacity amongst new and experienced teachers, doing peer mentoring, coaching, and leading teams. So often we're asked in our roles as teachers, so often really strong teachers are asked to lead a department or chair a grade team or be a data specialist. And very often those positions don't come with a whole lot of formal training or pay increases at the school. And so again, we're looking to not formalize in the terms of narrowing those positions, but really creating experiences where folks can build capacity in those. So I'm a 20-year teacher, and in my current capacity teaching, much of my work happens in developing new teachers. And so the first course articulating the intangibles came about because for all of you who work in teacher development as teachers yourselves or teacher educators, you know how difficult it is to translate the complexity of a classroom into helping novices develop, or even to have really informed conversations amongst colleagues to share practices, to share strategies, activities. And so articulating the intangibles is a signal to there's lots of intangible work in being a teacher. There's lots of mystery, lots of magic, but as much as we can without taking a reductionist stance, without just kind of narrowing it to a set of moves, we try and help people find language and frameworks for describing the powerful work that they're doing. From there, developing a language of practice that can be shared across practitioners, we look to really develop capacity in different spaces. So we distinguish between coaching and mentoring, which sometimes is not, those roles don't always get distinguished in schools or exist as distinct roles in schools, and we really see mentoring as working to develop the whole person. And so we're thinking about developing very particular skills around mentoring, and we've been blessed with working with experienced mentors all over the country who contribute their voices from the field and helping to build a sort of repertoire of mentoring moves for the teaching profession. And then coaching is really thinking about instructional coaching as much more direct development in terms of skills, knowledge, dispositions that directly translate into effective teaching practice. And then our final course, which will be in development soon, is leading teams. And again, this is the understanding that adults throughout these courses, there's an understanding that wonderful teachers of young people can oftentimes in their transition to working with adults can face challenges they didn't anticipate. And so all of these courses focus on working with adult learners, adult development, and leading teams in particular is meant to develop strategies and protocols for facilitating teams of teachers, whether those be departments, professional learning teams, professional learning communities, grade teams. And so often really effective teachers, as I'm sure many of you in this room are asked to do these sorts of things without a lot of structure or support. And so again, the theory of change of this course is that we're bringing people together to develop capacity to really formalize some of those structures and supports that are going to allow us to be really effective teacher leaders.
Thanks, Noah. I wonder, there's been a bunch of questions coming through. I'm trying to sort of read some of them, and I think we will address them. But one thing I wanted to sort of talk about really quickly that we haven't yet, and actually I think is Noah and my sort of favorite part of this, is the degree to which we reflect current practitioners in the sort of development, the co-creation that we've done and will continue to do with practitioners. I can think of two examples of that. One, we actually have video footage and sort of participant interviews, voices from the field, if you will, where we are acting out the mission of ILC by elevating the voices of teachers who are actually doing this work as we connect it to the course content. And so I don't know, Noah, if you want to talk a little bit about that. That's just one example, and I'll talk about the other in just a minute.
Yeah, I guess thanks, Jen. My response would just be that, throughout the entire certificate program, one of the organizing principles is a deep respect for the profession. And so as much as possible, this has been participant developed in that we've developed live sessions, in-person sessions, and really use those opportunities to learn together. We don't enter into this work thinking that we're the experts and that we are here to impart a laundry list of knowledge. Rather, it is really about bringing together the profession, learning from one another, and then taking that learning and formalizing it in some way so that we can play it forward with our colleagues and in our practices. So face-to-face sessions, both in Kansas City and in our work on campus at HGSE, have been crucial in developing the content that you'll encounter in this course, throughout the certificate.
And to be clear, there have been a lot of questions around asynchronous. Can I take this whenever? That sort of content, that's content we're sharing with you. It's not required for you to be live in any of those places, but as we develop continued content and there are opportunities for you to join us in person for other courses, we will let you know. One logistical question I'm seeing in the chat, thinking ahead to summer vacation. Yes. You'll notice that's why we have both the June term and a July term to sort of establish that flexibility over time. you can join remotely. The hope is that we would have people from all over the world joining. So probably the experience that you'll sort of have if you're joining from a different time zone or while on vacation is that you just might be interacting with different people, people being online at different times. So sort of the more recent comments on the discussion boards or in the community forums would be sort of time bound in that way, but it shouldn't affect your ability so long as you are willing to do the work. Then I think you can plan it around your own schedule. The piece around summer cohorts versus sort of during at least the US based academic school year calendar is really just about, the difference between trying it out in your classroom with your students right there versus sort of planning to try it out. So whether you're trying it out in a sort of lesson design or you're trying out in a conversation with colleagues, there's opportunities to do that. The practice challenges are flexible to whether you are in your school environment or not, whether that means you're on vacation or not. To your question about, I'm sorry, I can't see your whole name in my sort of limited view, but to your question about competencies that effective teachers and teacher leaders possess, really glad that you asked that question. I think that's something that we're developing across all 4 courses. And I think that's something that we've designed this because there are so many different programs and there are so many different requirements at different state and district levels. We want this to be as, open to fitting as many contexts as possible. But yes, we do have some ideas. I don't know if you want to sort of briefly mention your goals around these competencies.
Sure. I mean, I think you can review, thanks for the question. You can review articulated course competencies and objectives on the webpage. To speak more generally, what we're hoping in the first course, Articulating the Intangibles, is people build capacity to analyze and discuss their practice and the practice of others. Again, so often great teachers are doing the work, but are unable to necessarily slow down their thinking to describe or discuss what it is they're actually doing with others. And that makes it very difficult for us to share what's effective and also to develop novice talent. And so establishing frameworks from which we can analyze practice and discuss practice is a capacity that is largely the focus of the first course. And with that comes a capacity to align. So oftentimes there's a disconnect or a gap between our intentions and our actions. We're mission driven, we have a lot of core values, and then our enactments can sometimes deviate or veer from some of those values. And so there's a capacity building around aligning along multiple levels of practice. So those are the core capacities that we look at in course 1. In course 2, mentoring, there's a lot of capacity building around having difficult discussions, listening well, providing feedback, differentiating between social emotional, or what we call psychosocial support, and help with career advancement, navigating a school institution, establishing tenure, things like that. In coaching, we're really keenly focused on instructional moves and content coaching. And so a lot of the capacities that you build are observing classrooms really well, providing very targeted, actionable feedback and following up with that feedback, and organizing your coaching so that you're really able to develop and grow over time with the folks you're coaching. And then in leading teams, we're thinking about facilitation strategies, building capacity and facilitation strategies and protocols for bringing together adults in collaborative efforts with clear goal orientation. So hopefully that answers some questions about the sorts of capacities you're developing across this certificate program.
I'm going to answer 2 logistical questions, and then we have a really great question from Emily that I want to get to too. Yes, Charisse, you don't have to have your own classroom. The whole point of this is sort of building capacity in classrooms, as Noah just mentioned. So if you're working with teachers in a classroom, even if you don't still have your own individual classroom. This certificate program is still for you. And in terms of passing the course, we have required deadlines for submitting sort of peer feedback. As we said, we don't have sort of, Noah's not in there grading all your papers every week. He would love to, but the idea is that there are so many of you that he couldn't possibly. So there aren't any sort of formal papers or anything like that, but there will be, you know, what you put into it is what you get out of it in terms of the peer feedback. So the rich discussion and sort of digging into each other's practices is not sort of formally in the form of a quiz or an exam or a dissertation type paper, right? But it is in your sort of constant and thoughtful interaction with each other. The question that I want to get to from Emily, and I think it applies both to your question about anti-racist lenses within each course, but also sort of really any specific content framework or sort of timely issue in education or in the world. You know, we've designed these courses, and Noah will talk more about this. We've designed these courses to build the skills to have conversations and sort of develop leadership capacity across anything that is needed from the perspective of the classroom. So while we don't, in the first two courses, we don't yet discuss specifically anti-racist lenses or content around sort of how to develop, you know, an anti-racist mentoring relationship or have those conversations with the mentee. It is really about how to have difficult conversations, as Noah said, and it's about sort of developing the coaching and team capacities to move a community to where you want it to go, whether it be from an anti-racist lens, from, you know, a trauma-informed schools lens. We're not going to teach you about that particular content because there are plenty of resources for that. But no, I don't know if you want to sort of discuss more about how it's a skill building rather than sort of deep embedded sort of theoretical content experience.
I think, Jen, you've named it. I mean, for certainly equity and opportunity, anti-racist strands are a through line. All of the voices that you'll hear from are keenly committed to and hold anti-racist practices as core values. And I think that we'll be absolutely looking for voices from the field to elevate those particular anti-racist practices and have those be a rich part of discussions throughout the certificate.
You're welcome, Emily. Thanks for your great question. I do want to address one. There were a couple of pre-questions too, and then Arnetta, your question is a great one. I think the difficulty for us around sort of the admin 2 or any sort of like particular certifications that you may need to do in your own context. We're always open to finding ways to sort of support your making the case that this would affect that, but we're not directly affiliated with the ability to sort of like, you know, push you towards graduate certification or any sort of district level certification for that. So that becomes sort of an individual back and forth with us. We're happy to provide whatever materials you need in order to make the case. I will say that we are, at least in Massachusetts right now, we're a provider of PDPs, and we are going through the application process to be a nationwide supporter of continuing education credits. So that's where hopefully that will make it a little bit easier, but in terms of those really discrete applications to stepwise promotions or requirements in your context, we would have to do that on an individual basis. You're nearly at time. As you've noticed, my team has mentioned that we are recording these questions. We will follow up. We're also developing a frequently asked questions resource to live on our certificate page, but I want to be respectful of the fact that hopefully you all have learners to get back to at this point in the day. And so we really just want to thank you for your time. I will put up really quickly a slide for where you can find more information, and we'll stay for just one more minute to sort of say goodbye. But thank you so much for attending. This recording will be posted for you to peruse later if it was a lot of information to take in, we understand. But welcome to the professional education community, and we hope to hear from you. And thank you. Big thank you to Noah.
Thanks, folks.